And a lady called me and she said, wow, y'all do a lot. And I think a lot of people think that it just kind of happens magically, that the art elves come in the middle of the night and switch out all the art and hang everything for the new shows and stuff. But it doesn't quite work that way. It takes, in a lot of cases, 2 years to, get a show on the wall.
The Texas Hill Country is one of the most beautiful places on earth. In this podcast, recent Hill Country resident Tom Fox visits with the people and organizations that make this one of the most unique areas of Texas. Join Tom as he explores the people, places, and their activities of the Texas Hill Country.
Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, back for another episode, and I'm thrilled to be back with Darrell Beauchamp. Darrell is the director of the Museum of Western Art here in Kerrville, and they've got some great upcoming exhibits that I wanted to visit with Darrell about. He took some time to visit with me today. So, Darrell, first of all, thank you, and welcome back to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tom. I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to get the information out about the Museum of Western Art.
Well, it turns out that our first episode, it was long enough I could split into 2 episodes. We had about 3,000 downloads.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I saw that on the website. And
it was pretty impressive. I have to say it did much better than I thought. So obviously people want to hear about you guys. So what do you have coming up here in the first quarter of 2022?
Not a whole lot of anything. The joke is we had a big ad in the Kerrville Daily Times recently. We listed everything we're doing, and a lady called me and she said, wow, y'all do a lot. And I think a lot of people think that it just kind of happens magically, that the art elves come in the middle of the night and switch out all the art and hang everything for the new shows and stuff. But it doesn't quite work that way. It takes, in a lot of cases, 2 years to, get a show on the wall. And you're always planning out what's going to be on what wall and where and when, and so you can cover everything. So we've got a lot of stuff coming up in the next, in the fiscal year 2022, and we're excited about it. A couple of minor shows, I say minor shows, littler shows in our galleries going on right now. We've got The Color of Horses. It's 34 horse portraits by Darrell Dickinson, who was a famous cowboy artist of America member, was known as the top equine painter in the country, and he was approached by a guy named Ben K. Green, who was a veterinarian and an author, and he wanted him to paint 34 portraits of horses to illustrate the colors of horses, and that shows up through the end of this month. And that's exciting when you could put 34 portraits of horses up on the same walls. People walk in and go, wow, I didn't know there were that many colors of horses. But it's a great show, and it's a good little story, that we have behind it. And to have that many portraits by one artist in the gallery at a time is pretty impressive. Also, at the same time, we've got G. Harvey, the Painter of Light, an exhibition of works from our permanent collection that we own by G. Harvey. And those works will be up through the end of March 26th. In our main gallery, we've got works from our permanent collection, and they're up through March 26th. And so that kind of gets us to the 1st of April, when probably one of the biggest shows we've ever done is coming online. And that's a show called The Heavens Declare. It's a show based on the biblical Psalm 19:1, that says the heavens declare the glory of God, and the hands declares his works. And what we've done is we put together 10 artists from around the country, Colorado, Oklahoma, Texas, Georgia, Arizona, New Mexico, California, I think. They paint nothing but the skies. They paint landscapes, include just a little bit of landscape and a whole lot of the heavens. And it's going to be a unique show because there's a lot of different ways to paint clouds and to paint heavens. Thunderstorms and rolling clouds and wispy clouds and abstractions. And so we're going to have about 100 works in all 3 of our main galleries. That show's going to run from April 1st to the middle of July 9. And we're real excited about it because it's a complete diversion from a lot of the cowboys on horses in streams looking left or looking right, or noble Native Americans hunting buffalo. I mean, we've all seen a lot of that work, but a chance to put together The Heavens Declare, 10 different artists and their interpretations of the heavens. These are people who know how to paint humidity, as Phil Bob Borman, one of the artists, said. That's all we're doing, he says, painting humidity, painting clouds. And it is going to be an absolutely spectacular show. We're going to have a big grand opening for it on April the 9th, and people are welcome to come to that. We need to RSVP for that because we're going to have big food and beverage, bars, and it's going to be a big opening for us. And it's a show that runs 100 complete days. So it's a little longer than our average show. Usually about 80 to 90 days is all we can, before we all get tired of the paintings and we want something new to go on the walls. But 100 Days of the Heavens Declare, and that's going to run from April 1st to July 9. We're really excited about it. Works will be featured in the show by Phil Bob Borman, Russell Case, Laurel Daniel, she's out of Austin, Texas, Linda Glover Gooch, David Griffin, David Grossman, Michael Magrin, Denise LaRue Malky is a Texas artist, Phil Stark, and John Taft. And they are just absolutely the best when it comes to painting the heavens, to coming to paint landscapes. And some of them have, really nice big outcroppings and rocks, and the landscape is there and very prominent, but the skies are the feature of the thing, clouds rolling in or thunderstorm booming in the background. And some of them are just nothing but the clouds. And the kind of the myriad of ways that you could paint a cloud is pretty fascinating. They're going to be big works. The biggest work in the show is like 70 by 80 inches, and some small works. And everything's going to be for sale. The artists have allowed us to cut a deal with them. We're going to get a consignment out of it. So if we sell a work, the museum benefits, the artist benefits, and the new collector gets to take home a wonderful work of art. So we're really excited about that. And that's going to run from, like I say, April to the middle of July. It's interwoven in that we have multiple workshops. Those artists are going to be coming and teaching workshops for people. There's a workshop in March by Steve Talley. He's going to talk about nocturnals, and he's an artist out of Fredericksburg, Texas, and Steve does a wonderful job of painting nocturnal works, and he works in a mixed media. And if anybody's interested, all they've got to do is call the museum, and we sign you up for the Steve Talley workshop. But the landscape workshops, we're going to have Linda Glover Gooch, who's one of the top landscape painters in the country. She's coming for a 3-day workshop, as is Denise LaRue Malky, as is John Taft. So 3 workshops that center on the heavens and how to paint good landscapes, plus the Steve Talley nocturnal workshops. And that's what we're going to kick off the early part of the year with, is these workshops. And they're paid workshops. You have to pay to come to these workshops, but you're getting to work with absolutely 4 of the best, artists in the country. So if you're out there listening to this podcast and you're interested in upping your game, so to speak, call the Museum of Western Art and sign up for one of our workshops. And they're at various different prices, $350, $450, $400, depending on the artist and the amount of time that we're putting in them. But it's going to be exciting to have those workshops at the same time that the exhibitions, are there. And if you take the workshop, not only do you get the instruction of the artist that you're training under, but it includes admission to the shows. And I'll be doing, during that 3-day period, a walking tour of the galleries and talking about very specific works of art and the theory behind how we select the art for any given exhibition. So, that's exciting. And then, so we've got, after the big landscape show, The Heavens Declare, ends in July, we've got Luckenbach Legacy, and that's going to be a fun show. A lot of your listeners are probably familiar with Luckenbach, Texas. Hondo Crouch was the founder, if you will, the mayor of Luckenbach, the clown prince of Luckenbach. And, from 1971 till he died in 1976, and then right after he passed, some little guys named Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings wrote a song called Let's Go to Luckenbach, Texas, and of course put it on the map. And for the past 50 years, Luckenbach's been one of those go-to places. It's a tourism area, a lot of dances, a lot of musicians that hang out there, good cold beer, and it's a wonderful place. But Hondo's daughter is a lady named Becky Crouch Patterson. And Becky is an artist in her own right. She's a designer and an author. She's written 3 books about Luckenbach, one called Hondo, My Father, which was famous right after he passed away. One called Luckenbach, The Center of the Known Universe. And it truly is in Texas. You know, you're not nobody until you go to Luckenbach, is the old joke. And then she wrote a book about their ranch, about the family's ranch, called The Ranch That Was Us. And so we're going to do a show of Becky's works, both as a designer and an author, but then she's an artist in her own right. And naturally, a lot of her artwork and design work center on the Luckenbach Legacy. It centers on the Steiler Ranch and Fredericksburg area, which is the Kerrville area. And so we're thrilled to be able to have designs by Becky, books by Becky. We're going to have a big opening by Becky Crouch Patterson called Luckenbach Legacy. Hondo's Daughter is what it's called. Got kind of a play on the book, Hondo, My Father. This is called Hondo's Daughter. And we're excited about that because it's going to be a unique look into a regional phenomenon, if you will, in, Luckenbach, Texas. So that's coming up. We've got our annual roundup in the fall in September. We're excited about that. September 22nd through the 24th is our opening weekend of that. There'll be 120 plus works for sale at the museum. Artists from around the globe who paint and sculpt the American West. And so, we're excited about that. We always do family free days the last Saturday of every month. People get in free to enjoy the museum. It's our way of giving back. So those are coming up. We do monthly Wild West Wine Wednesdays. It's the first Wednesday of every month, which today we're recording this. It's a Wild West Wine Wednesday. We have a local winery that comes in, local wineries, and there's about 70 of them in this region. We have them come in and they talk about their wine, their product. They pass out samples. You can do a flight of different wines from the different things, and we talk about art. So it's a great social event, and that's at 5:30, the first Wednesday of every month. So that's always exciting. We do kids' craft days on the second Saturday. It's for children to come in and try their hand at wood carving. Was last week. Next month is going to be, basket making. There'll be something else, and there's 12 times a year we're inviting people to come out and do part of the crafts deal. What am I forgetting? The end of October every year we do a Halloween fest, and so that's on board. Last year we had almost 2,000 kids and their families at the museum. So, it's always an exciting time at the Museum of Western Art. And like I said to start this off, we're really not doing a whole lot this year. It's just, kind of the running joke in the museum industry. We're not doing a whole lot. But it took 10 minutes to tell everything that we were doing.
So before the song Luckenbach, Texas came out, Jerry Jeff Walker recorded an album in Luckenbach called Viva
Terlingua. Yeah.
And in the inside of what we used to call album jackets,
sure,
there's a picture of Hondo Crouch.
Yeah.
And his business card. And his business card said Imagineer.
Imagineer, sure. No, that's what we love about this whole show is that, Becky has honestly, Hondo didn't see Luckenbach in its heyday. He started it, created it. And Becky and her family have kept that dream alive. They've made Luckenbach. Jerry Jeff Walker recording Viva Terlingua there, Willie Whalen and the boys, and David Allen Coe, and the list just goes on and on. They're the ones that put it on the map, and they've had it on the map for the last 50 years since Hondo's been gone. Hondo Crouch died in 1976, so it's going on 50 years, 40 plus, that Hondo's been gone, and yet Luckenbach not only survives but still the center of the known universe. People. We had tourists through the other day, and they were making the tour from San Antonio back to San Antonio, going through Austin, and they were going up, Kerrville, Fredericksburg, Luckenbach, Johnson City, over to Austin, then down to San Antonio. And, they were mapping out, and the lady says, is there anything to see in Luckenbach? And the answer is no. But there's everything to see in Luckenbach, if that makes sense. it's one of those go-to places. It's got the post office and the beer hall, and on any given night, musicians will be there, and who knows will show up. I walked in one evening on a Friday night, and just standing there on the stage getting ready to go on was David Allan Coe. He was between gigs, and he just shows up at Luckenbach, and the little house band, Bobby and the Runners or whatever there was, they said, "Oh my God, that's David Allan Coe," and they gave up their spot so David could come up and sing. And you never know what you're going to find in Luckenbach, Texas.
Right.
And so we think that this show, the exhibition about Hondo and Luckenbach and Becky, as seen through Becky's eyes, the daughter of the founder of Luckenbach, if you will, is going to be a unique look at a different side of Texana and the region, Fredericksburg, Kerrville, Luckenbach, Comfort. Anybody who lives in the great hill country of Texas, they get it. It's a special place. And we're excited about having that show, because we'll be having Hondo's guitar will be there, and Jerry Jeff's jacket, and Gary P. Nunn, a famous Texas songwriter singer. Becky has designed clothes for all of them. She's designed hats for Willie for his movie. She's designed jackets and vests, and we'll have a lot of that stuff on display as well. In addition to her books, original manuscripts. Fun things from Luckenbach. We even talked about bringing over the skeletal remains of the Luckenbach chicken, but I don't think we're going to do that. But you never know. But it's always fun. It's something to do, and we're thrilled to be working with Becky and working with our curators and people to make great shows happen. And it's a little out of the norm, if you will. Again, not cowboys in a stream looking left and looking right. It's right. 1 month. Or 90 days, we're going to have the heavens declare, it'll be the heavens. That's different and unique. We close that show and we open up with another show about Becky, and Hondo Crouch and Luckenbach, and that's going to be different as well. So always trying to bring something different to the hill country.
So that brings up a theme I wanted to ask you about that I'm not sure I recognized the last time we visited, but that clearly we're in a museum, and when
right.
When I go into a museum, I have certain preconceived notions, and it's generally that I'm viewing something from the past or a celebration of
right.
the past.
Right.
But the more I talk to people in the hill country and think about what I learned from you in our first couple of podcasts, I don't think that's quite correct. This is certainly more than a celebration of the past. It is almost a living, breathing organism, because you have a past, you have a present, you even have a future
right.
with your educational outreach. And I wanted to maybe pitch that to you and see if you thought that was a valid
that's a great observation, and I think one that has allowed us to not only survive but to thrive. A lot of museums in this country lose their mission, they lose their focus. It's easy to talk about the past and only be things that are in the vault, and only be things that are, tied to a past. But the West, by definition, is a living, breathing thing, right? It's an ongoing thing. Yeah, the cattle drives are over. The gunfights at the OK Corral no longer exist, although some could argue that they're, gunfights today. Bad guys still exist, good guys still exist. Guys on white horses and white hats are called policemen now, But we're a living, breathing thing, and so to keep a museum active, you have to be able to not only tell the story of the past, but you've got to talk about the future. And one of the things that we're doing is we're talking, we try to tie in the past to the future, to the current, be relevant to our viewers and viewership. Because the worst thing a museum can possibly do is become stale and stagnant. I see people in the community all the time, and I say, well, when's the last time you were at the Museum of Western Art? And they say, well, I was there 8 years ago, and I mean, dude, you're missing so much, because we're changing out our exhibits every 30, 60, 90 days. I mean, there's a schedule out for the next 2 years of, exciting shows, things that we're doing. I hear people say, well, such and such was bored. I don't get bored. I don't understand bored, because if you're bored, you're not paying attention. There's workshops to be done. There's free events to attend. There's social events, wine events. where every one of those events we talk not only about the past and the art that's on the walls, but we're always encouraging new artists, new authors, new writers. This venue that we're sitting in right now, our museum library, 6,000 volumes of the American West, and that encourages new writers. We're embracing the podcast. We're embracing the, Facebook and FaceTime and tweets and all of those things, because you have to stay relevant. So yeah, it's a living, breathing thing, and any good museum is doing that. They're paying attention to the culture out there. We paid attention to we heard about all the different things that are happening in our country. Black Lives Matters, cancel culture, and we're asking ourselves all the time, where do we fit in? Are we part of the problem, or are we part of the solution? And we think by having an active, ongoing discussion about the problems of the past help us to have a better future. So yeah, we're having those discussions about manifest destiny and white men coming across the country killing off the Native Americans. We're not scared of those topics. They're very much a part of our past. They're very much a part of what we do. The question is, are we continuing those bad practices, or are we part of the solution? And we tend to think we're part of the solution.
In our first podcast, we were talking about that topic or something similar, and you had a great phrase that I remembered, which was, let's have a discussion.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
If you want to reinterpret history, that's fine, but let's have a discussion. Yeah. And you seem to be a part of that. I visited with Don Frazier at the Schreiner.
Oh, yeah.
At the Texas Institute at Schreiner University, and we, of course, talked about that as well. And I really think if people want to bring new views, if we tie it to your phrase, let's have a discussion.
Sure.
It can be a very powerful learning experience.
Oh, it's a very positive thing. It can be a healing thing. I didn't have a dog in the old fight. You can't blame me for manifest destiny. You can't blame me for white man's annihilation of entire Indian tribes. Let's have that discussion, though. Let's talk about the political forces in play at that time. Let's talk about who was president, who was Indian commissioner and land commissioner, the fact that gold was involved, so money is always an issue, and that always a theme that kind of pops up in bad things occasionally, is the love of money and greed. Let's talk about bad guys. Let's talk about cowboys and Indians. Somebody said the other day, I said that phrase, cowboys and Indians. Well, you can't call them Indians. They're Native Americans. Yeah, they are. But let's talk about the commonalities of a common language. You get it when I say cowboys and Indians. Cowboys and Native Americans doesn't quite have the same ring to it. So some things become cliche. But if you're offended by that, let's talk about why you're offended by that. And we're glad to have that conversation, because it's not just one thing. People always tend to think that there's one solution, there was one issue at hand. There's always two sides to the story. And if we're telling a story that's incorrect because we're not telling both sides of it, then we need to look at that other side. And if you have good evidence of your argument, then I want to incorporate it into our story. And that's what we're trying to do. And that's what any good museum is doing, is having that discussion. A lot of museums, a lot of cities in town are having their statues torn down because people don't like the history. Well, they don't like the history, but, shouldn't we be talking about that history? I'm not saying that it was good, but we should have a discussion about that. So we've welcomed bronzes. I'll take any bronze in the country. If somebody in Houston, Austin doesn't like their bronze of Robert E. Lee, let's put it on this campus, because we're going to have that discussion. We're willing. We're not scared of, that discussion. You mentioned Don Frazier. He's intimately involved in a project called the 1836 Project.
Right.
Where does the story of Texas start? Well, we're part of telling that story as well,
Sure.
Because we have vaqueros and we have buffalo soldiers and we have cowboys and Indians. We have all these people, fur trappers and buffalo hunters, and we're part of telling that story as well. Because it's not just as simple as, there was a switch turned and all of a sudden it became a story of white man. There was an evolution to all these things. No matter what class or race of people you belong to, it's more than just one side. There's all these factors that come into play. And that's what a good museum is doing, is taking into account all those factors. So we're not scared of it. We're going to have that discussion, and like I said, let's talk about it.
That's a great way to end this. I wanted to thank you again for taking the time to visit with me, and I greatly look forward to continuing this conversation.
Oh, it's always our pleasure, and you're welcome back anytime. And we tell our visitors, our listeners out there, we're at 1550 Bandera Highway in Kerrville, Texas, museumofwesternart.com. Go out there and check us out. All the things I talked about are on the website. We have a large Facebook presence. We do everything, all the social media. And if you're old-fashioned and want to pick up the phone, the number's 830-896-2553. And call us, and we'll talk about it.
This is Tom Fox again. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Hill Country Podcast. I'm going to link to the Museum of Western Art in the show notes, and it will have full information on these fabulous upcoming exhibits. I hope that you will check it out if you live in the Hill Country. And if you don't live in the Hill Country, I hope you'll come and visit us at our #1 tourist attraction in Kerrville, the Museum of Western Art. If you have a story you would like to tell and you live in the Hill Country, I hope you will contact me. I want to tell the stories of the people, places, and things that make the Hill Country the most unique part of Texas. I hope you will join me in this exploration of love. Thanks so much for listening.